You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. We live in a world where we were taught to chase money as if it were something external, something that is out there, out of our control. They told us that it was difficult, that we had to suffer for it, that only a few managed it. But no one taught us the most important thing, that money does not come through blind effort, but through identity. Money does not obey your desires, it obeys your frequency. It is a reflection of how you feel about it, of what you believe you deserve, of the relationship you have with abundance. If you see him with fear, he runs away from you. If you see it with guilt, you reject it without realizing it. If you see it as needy, it becomes something unattainable. But if you see it as a natural extension of your growth, as something that flows into you as you grow, then everything changes. Eliminate mental garbage. Wealth does not fit in a poor mind. Anonymous author. I was always told that money was hard to come by, that you had to sweat, suffer, sacrifice, that only a few made it, that if someone had a lot, someone else had to have little. And I believed it. For years, I believed it. Until I realized that it was all a lie. Money is neither good nor bad. It is neither fair nor unfair. It has no morals. It does not punish or reward. It just is. It is a tool, a mirror, an extension of how you think, how you move in the world, of what you think you deserve. If you've spent your life chasing money, asking for more but getting little, feeling like it's always insufficient, let me tell you something. Money isn't the problem. The problem is the relationship you have with him. It's the way you see it. It's the fear, the guilt, the scarcity mindset that you've treated it with all your life. Your mind is broken. That's why you don't have money. I realized I was broke long before I checked my bank account. You didn't need to see the numbers in red to know. It was felt in the weight of my shoulders every morning, in the way I avoided opening emails with invoices, in the silent anguish that assailed me every time I saw someone paying without fear, as if money were not a problem for him. How did they do it? Why did some seem to move in a world where abundance was the norm, while I felt that every bill that went into my pocket had a foot in the exit door? The truth is that money hadn't left me. I had expelled him without realizing it. I had done it with every thought of scarcity, with every time I said, I can't afford it, with every minute I cared more about what I didn't have than what I could create. I had been programmed to survive, not to thrive, and the worst thing was that I myself had reinforced that programming without questioning it. Sound familiar? We live with the belief that wealth is something external, something we should pursue as if it were running away from us. But money is not a wild animal. It has no will of its own. Money is a reflection, a manifestation of how we think, how we feel, and above all, how much we think we deserve it. Because yes, that's the question we never want to ask ourselves. Do you really think you deserve to be rich? Don't answer me quickly. Take a moment. Close your eyes and notice how the word wealth feels inside you. Does it excite you or make you uncomfortable? Does it make you feel powerful or guilty? Can you imagine yourself with money and enjoying it? Or deep down, is there a fear of losing it? Of someone different making you? Of separating you from others? Because if there is resistance, no matter how minimal, there you have the reason why the money does not stay with you. I spent years without understanding it. I clung to the idea that I should work harder, do more, push harder. But strength without direction is like rowing in circles. And that's what he did. He rowed and rowed without moving forward. Until I understood that before asking for more money, I had to make room to receive it. I had to pull out the rotten roots in my mind, those that had grown with stories of scarcity, with inherited phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, or more money, more problems. Phrases that stuck in me before I could defend myself, before I could choose what to believe. And you, what beliefs have you been carrying without realizing it? Maybe you were taught that money corrupts, that rich people are cold and selfish, that you have to settle for what is fair. Maybe you saw your parents fight for money, or grow up afraid that it would never be enough. And even if you think you don't think that way anymore, your subconscious continues to operate under those rules. It's like an old program running in the background, draining your energy, blocking any attempt at abundance. So, before manifesting more money, you first have to do a deep cleaning, because you can't fill a glass if it's already overflowing with garbage. And if your mind is filled with fear, anxiety, and limiting beliefs, wealth has nowhere to go. It was painful to realize this. I was faced with my fears, with my resistance, with all the times when I had unconsciously refused money, because deep down, I was afraid of it. Fear of what it could do to me, of how it would change my life, of how it would alter my relationship with others. And the most ironic thing of all is that I complained about not having it, while, deep down, I kept it away. I had to let go of the guilt of wanting more, let go of the idea that scarcity is nobler than abundance, letting go of resentment towards those who had what I wanted, because every thought of envy was a confirmation that I believed that wealth was something foreign to me. And as long as I saw it as something external, it would still be out of my reach. And you? What are you holding on to? What space do you need to free up for abundance to enter your life? Because it is not enough to desire wealth. You have to be prepared to receive it. We have to show the universe that we have a place for it, that we are ready. And that is not done by repeating empty statements or dreaming of the lottery. It is done by changing from within. So, get started now. Observe your thoughts about money, question them, disassemble them. Do they add or subtract from you? Do they bring you closer to abundance or keep you stuck in scarcity? If you want to be rich, think like someone who already is. Not from arrogance or greed, but from the certainty that abundance is your natural right. Because it is. Your mind is broken. That's why you don't have money. Years ago, I sat in front of my bank account and saw numbers I didn't want to see. 0. Almost 0. Negative. I laughed with a contained bitterness. How the hell had he gotten there? It wasn't the first time it happened, but this time it hurt more. Because deep down, something in me knew that it wasn't a matter of bad luck or economics. It was something deeper, something that I had been dragging along, something that I myself was holding without realizing it. Because money is never just money. It is a reflex. It is the echo of what we think, what we feel, and what we think we deserve. And if my bank account was in the red, it was because my mind was in the red too. But at the time I didn't understand it. I only saw the surface, the symptom, not the cause. How many times has it happened to you? How many times have you felt that money is slipping out of your hands like sand between your fingers? That no matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. That you win and you lose as if you were trapped in an eternal cycle of lack. You see it in your life and you think it's the economy, the system, the injustice of the world. And some of that may be true. But the truth that is most difficult for us to accept is this: what you see outside is a reflection of what you have inside. Because money follows a pattern. And that pattern is not in your bank account, or in your job, or in your business. It's on your mind. In what you think possible. In what you allow yourself to receive. In the way you interpret wealth. In how you react when you see someone with more money than you. In the words you use when you talk about success, effort, abundance. In the fears that you have not even questioned, because you inherited them without realizing it. I grew up listening to phrases that seemed harmless, but over time became invisible shackles. Money doesn't grow on trees. More money, more problems. The rich are dishonest. You have to work hard to make a living. Each of those phrases lodged in me like a seed, and those seeds bore fruit. Rotten fruits that made me believe that making money was difficult, that wealth was dangerous, that if I had a lot, I would somehow lose it or become someone despicable. And the most ironic thing is that I said I wanted money. I wanted it. I asked for it. I complained about not having it. But in my subconscious, there was a program running in the background that rejected it. Like a man who wants to find love, but is terrified of commitment. Like someone who says he wants to fly, but is terrified of heights. Do you see? It's not what you say, it's what you feel. It's not what you ask for, it's what you think is possible. The day I understood this, I felt anger. Not against the system, not against money, not against life. Against myself. Because I realized that it had been my own enemy. That it was not bad luck, nor a crisis, nor destiny. It was my mind, my programming. And the worst thing was that I had fed her myself all these years without knowing it. It's easy to blame the external. To say that you don't have money because times are difficult, because salaries are low, because the government steals, because opportunities are few. And while some of those things may be true, if you continue to believe that your wealth depends on them, you will still be a slave. Because money, like energy, flows to where there is room to receive it. And if your mind is full of fear, of doubt, of stories of lack, money can't come in. He stays outside, like someone knocking on the door of a house where he knows he is not welcome. Do you know what the difference is between someone who has money and someone who doesn't? It's not education. It's not luck. It's not the family they were born into. It's the way they think. It's the way they see themselves. Because people with money don't ask themselves if they deserve it. He takes it for granted. She doesn't feel guilty about having it. He does not reject it. He doesn't think he has to fight to win it. He moves with the certainty that money is a tool, not an enemy. And you? How do you see it? If money were a person and came into your life, how would you receive it? With distrust? Afraid that he will betray you? With resentment? Because you think he has been unfair to you? Or with open arms, with gratitude? With the certainty that it is only a vehicle to multiply what you already are. Because if you feel uncomfortable thinking about having a lot of money, if a part of you gets scared when you imagine being a millionaire, if you think that wealth is going to change you for the worse, then there you have the answer. It's not that you can't have it, you won't let him in. The first time I realized this, I felt vertigo. It was like seeing my whole life with a new perspective, as if I suddenly understood why things had been the way they were, as if someone had given me the key I was looking for in the wrong places. And that's when I started doing something I'd never done before, unlearning. Because before you manifest wealth, before you attract money, you have to make space. And making space means uprooting all those beliefs that have been blocking you without you noticing. It's like wanting to fill a glass that's already full of dirty water. You can't. It must be emptied first. So I began to question every thought of scarcity. Every time my mind said, "There's not enough," I wondered, is it true or is it just a story I learned? Whenever I was afraid of losing money, I asked myself, why do I think money is so fragile? Every time I found myself judging someone for being rich, I wondered, what does that say about me? And little by little, without realizing it, something began to change. Not outside, inside, because when you change what you believe, you change what you create. And one day, without warning, I realized that money was no longer an issue, that it flowed to me in unexpected ways, that opportunities that I didn't see before appeared in front of me, that I no longer felt anguish at the thought of paying my bills, that my mind had been reprogrammed to see wealth as something natural. Not because I had learned new strategies, not because I had worked harder, not because circumstances had magically changed, but because I had changed, because I gave myself permission, because I understood that it was never about the money, it was always about me. Eliminate mental garbage. Wealth does not fit in a poor mind. I found myself in the same place as always, a small, messy room, with papers piled up on the table and clothes tossed carelessly on a chair. There were unpaid bills mixed with receipts for impulse purchases, books promising success, gathering dust, and a sense of suffocation that came not from physical space, but from something deeper, something that accompanied me wherever I went. We live surrounded by useless things. We keep clothes we don't wear, files we never review, memories that weigh more heavily than they give us. But the worst is not in what we accumulate outside, but in what we accumulate inside. Old thoughts, outdated beliefs, inherited fears, stories that no longer make sense, but that we continue to tell as if they were the only truth. And so we live, wanting to attract wealth while our mind is crammed with garbage. When was the last time you cleansed? Not from your home, but from your mind. When was the last time you questioned the thoughts you repeat every day? Because in the end, poverty begins there, in the repetition of phrases such as, "I can't," "It's not for me," "Money is hard to earn," "Better known bad than unknown good." And the worst thing is that those phrases are not yours. You inherited them. You grew up listening to them and accepted them without even hesitation. Words are like seeds. And those seeds have been growing in your mind since you were a kid. If you were taught that money is dirty, you will reject it even if you need it. If you were told that being rich is dangerous, you will sabotage yourself every time you start having more. If you learn that abundance is only for a few, you will never feel worthy of it. And life, which is nothing more than a mirror of what you believe, will be in charge of proving you right. But here's the truth that no one tells us. The poor mind is not the one with little money. It is the one that is full of limitations. It is the one that sees problems where others see opportunities. It is the one that spends more energy complaining than finding solutions. She is the one who finds excuses not to do what she knows she has to do. It is the one that continues to be trapped in the same history, with the same fears, with the same justifications as always. And the poor mind has nothing to do with education, with family, with the country in which you were born. There are people with doctorates who are mentally poor, and there are people without studies who are millionaires because they think differently. Because wealth is not just money. It's a way of looking at life. It is the ability to see possibilities where others see obstacles. It is the courage to let go of the old to make room for the new. But letting go is scary, because it means letting go of what is familiar to us. And even if that familiarity hurts us, we prefer to hold on to it. Have you noticed how many people keep repeating the same complaints year after year without doing anything to change? I always lack money. I'm never lucky. It's the government's fault. The same thing always happens. And yes, the same thing always happens because they always think the same thing. I was there too, looking in the mirror and seeing someone caught up in their own story, afraid to let go, afraid to change. But there was a day when I got fed up. I got fed up with my own speech. I got tired of hearing myself say the same things without lifting a finger to do something different. I got tired of living surrounded by scarcity, not of money, but of ideas. So I started cleaning, not outside, inside. The first step was to observe what he told me every day. Every time I thought about money, what came up in my mind? Was it excitement or was it fear? Was it enthusiasm or guilt? I found that my first instinct was to worry, to tense up, to feel like I wasn't enough. And then I understood that the biggest garbage was not in my environment, but in my own head. I began to let go of beliefs, like someone emptying a room full of things that are no longer useful. One by one. Money is hard-earned. I replaced with money flows to me easily. If I have a lot, others will have less. I changed it to abundance is infinite and enough for everyone. I'm not good with money. I transformed it into I can learn everything I need to manage it well. And no, it wasn't magic. It wasn't overnight. But slowly, with every thought I let go, I began to feel lighter, freer, more open to receiving. Because life doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you're willing to receive. And if you continue to cling to scarcity, abundance has nowhere to enter. Look at your life now. Everything you see around you, everything you have or don't have, is a reflection of your mind. You can't change the external without changing the internal first. You can't attract wealth if you're still tied to poverty inside. You can't have a new life if you keep carrying old thoughts. So make room. Let go of what is no longer useful. Question everything. Don't take anything for granted. Don't accept ideas just because you've always believed them. Ask yourself, does this help me or limit me? Does it bring me closer to what I want or does it distance me? And if you don't like the answer, throw it away. Release it. Let him go. Cut the cord of scarcity. The energy of money doesn't flow in a toxic environment. Money was never just bills and coins. It was a shadow in the house, a forbidden topic on the table, a silent war between worried looks and accounts that didn't add up. I saw it in my mother's sighs when she checked the prices at the supermarket, in the tension in my father's shoulders when the bills arrived, in the awkward silences when someone asked about our vacations, and the answer was always the same: maybe next year. I grew up understanding that money was something fragile, elusive, always on the verge of disappearing. There was no talk of abundance, only of limits. Be careful not to spend too much. Don't ask for expensive things. Save because you never know. Phrases that were repeated like an echo, like a curse inherited generation after generation. Without realizing it, we weave a web of scarcity around us. And when the money came, we didn't celebrate. We looked at him with fear, with distrust, with the certainty that sooner or later he would leave. Years later, with my bank account full of zeros, but not the ones I wanted, I understood something that shook me to the core. The scarcity was not a number, it was an environment. It was a dense energy that enveloped us, that kept us trapped in the idea that it was never enough. It was like an invisible cable that connected us to lack, to the idea that life was a constant struggle, a war between what we wanted and what we thought we deserved. It didn't matter how hard I tried, how hard I worked. He always seemed to be fighting against a current stronger than me. And that current was my environment. The conversations about how difficult everything was, the news full of crisis, unemployment, inflation, the people around me who lived repeating the same old story. Money is not enough. The rich are thieves. If you want something in life, you have to suffer for it. I didn't realize it, but I was surrounded by a mentality that drained any chance of prosperity. It was like trying to fill a glass with a hole in the bottom. He could receive money, but he never stayed. Not because money was elusive, but because my environment was toxic to abundance. And if money is energy, how could it flow in a space where all that existed was fear, complaint, and despair? The first time I heard that I had to cut the scarcity cord, I thought it was an exaggeration. How was my environment going to be the problem? I worked hard, I did everything right, I followed the rules. But then I took a closer look. I watched myself. How many times did he talk about money with complaint, with anguish? How many times did I surround myself with people who only saw problems but never looked for solutions? How many times did I punish myself for spending on something that made me happy? The answer was everywhere. My relationship with money was intoxicated. Not because of a lack of resources, but because of an excess of fear. That day, I decided to do a cleanse. Not from my accounts, but from my connections. I cut off conversations that revolved around scarcity. I stopped talking about money as if it were an enemy. I moved away from people who only knew how to complain without doing anything to change. I forbade myself to repeat phrases of lack. And above all, I stopped justifying my emotional poverty as if it were a medal of honor. Because there's something no one tells us. It's not just how much you earn, it's how you feel about what you earn. You can have little and feel abundant. You can have a lot and live in fear of losing it. The difference is not in the money, it's in the energy that surrounds it. Money needs room to move. Like water in a river. Like air in an open room. If you catch it, it stagnates. If you drown it in fear, it disappears. If you curse it, it abandons you. And the only way to get it flowing is to clear the ground, cut the wires that keep it trapped in an environment where it can't breathe. Ask yourself, how is your relationship with money? How do you talk about him? How do you feel about it? Does it weigh you down? Scared of you? Do you feel guilty when you have it? Do you feel less when you don't have it? Look around. Listen to the conversations you're engaged in. Observe what you consume, what you repeat, what you believe without questioning it. And if there is toxicity in all this, cut the cord. Because if you don't, the money can never stay with you. The day I started to change my environment, everything changed. Not immediately, but with a force I hadn't felt before. Suddenly money was no longer an enemy. It began to arrive in unexpected ways. I began to see him as an ally, as a tool, not as an executioner. I learned that wealth is not just a number in the bank. It is a state of mind, a way of living, a way of relating to the energy of life. And I understood something that I hadn't been told before. Abundance is not for the few. It is not a privilege reserved for those who were born in a cradle of gold. It is for those who are willing to receive it, for those who cut ties with scarcity, for those who stop holding beliefs that no longer serve them, for those who dare to change, even if the whole world tells them that it can't be done. Goodbye, guilt. Money is not the problem, it's your relationship with it. Money had always been an uncomfortable topic, like an unwanted guest in a house where everyone looks at each other out of the corner of their eye, where no one wants to mention their presence, but everyone knows that it is there, floating in the air like a poorly kept secret. There was no talk of money without tension, without fear, without a hint of resentment. It was in the elusive glances when someone asked about prices, in the forced smiles when the receipts arrived, in the well-crafted excuses when a bill had to be paid among friends. I was in the feeling that asking for a raise was almost an act of betrayal, in the discomfort of accepting that one wanted more. And so we grew up, believing that money was dirty, that it corrupted, that those who had it in excess had done something questionable to get it. How many times have you heard it said that rich people are selfish, that millionaires exploit others, that if someone has a lot, it's because they took something from someone? They are phrases that seemed harmless, but that remained as invisible tattoos in the mind. And suddenly, without realizing it, you found yourself repeating them, looking with distrust at who was successful, feeling a strange weight when you received money, believing that if you did too well, something bad had to happen. But here's the truth that is hardest for us to accept. Money is not the problem. It never was. The problem is the relationship we have with him, because we have turned money into a judge, into a villain, into a silent enemy. And as long as we see it that way, it can never flow freely in our lives. How many times have you felt guilty for wanting more? For spending on something that makes you happy? For thinking big? For imagining yourself with a prosperous life? How many times have you felt that if you win too much, you're going to be looked at differently, judged, called ambitious in the worst sense of the word? Because we were taught that humility is synonymous with scarcity, that sacrifice is the only legitimate way to earn a living, that asking for more is almost disrespectful. But what if you stopped feeling guilty about craving abundance? If you let go of the belief that having more means taking something away from someone? Because wealth is not a cake with limited portions. It is a river that flows for those who dare to open their hands, and guilt is a dam that stops it. The day I realized this, I felt a knot in my stomach, because it meant that I had been my biggest obstacle. That every time I turned down an opportunity, every time I minimized my own worth, every time I felt uncomfortable receiving money, it was my mind that was pushing it away. Not the economy, not the system, not luck. Then I started to change the way I looked at money. I stopped seeing it as something that had to be earned through suffering, as something that had to be justified, as something that came with invisible conditions. And I understood something that changed my life. Money is a reflection. Not about what you do, but about how you feel about him. Not how much you work, but how much you think you deserve. Not of the circumstances, but of the energy with which you receive it. Because money goes where it's welcome. He stays where he is respected. It flows where there is gratitude instead of guilt, where there is trust instead of fear. And you, how do you receive it? With open hands or with shame? With emotion or tension? With the certainty that you deserve it, or with the feeling that at any moment it can disappear? Guilt is an invisible chain. You can't see it, but you feel it in every decision. In each, I don't need that much. In each, I don't want to appear materialistic. In each, just enough is enough for me. It is a trap disguised as humility. But humility is not a shortage. True humility is recognizing that you can have more without feeling less, that you can be abundant without losing your essence, that you can receive without guilt, because what you receive you can also share, expand, multiply. Empty the glass. If you don't let go of the old, the new won't come. There was a cup on the table, filled to the brim with an already cold coffee. It had been there for several hours, maybe days. The dark liquid reflected a distorted version of the ceiling lamp, as if it didn't want to let me see clearly. I tried pouring new water into the cup, but it overflowed. There was no space. It didn't matter how pure the water was, how much I needed it, how fresh and crystal clear it flowed from the pitcher. The cup could not receive it. It was already full of something old. That's how life works. That's how the mind works. That's how money works. We want more. We ask for more. We want something to change. But we continue to cling to what is no longer useful. We complain about the lack of opportunities, but we refuse to let go of the fears that keep us tied. We want a new story, but we continue to tell the old one. And here is the truth that is most difficult for us to accept. The space that you do not clean is filled with the same thing. What you don't let go of becomes a dead weight. What you don't let go ends up leaving you without oxygen. I understood it late. I spent years sustaining relationships, jobs, habits, thoughts that no longer added to me. Not because I loved them, but because they gave me a false sense of security. Because I had been taught that letting go is losing. But letting go is not losing. It's making space. It is to allow life to move, for something new to arrive, for energy to flow without the chains of the old. How many times have you held on to something just because it's familiar? A job you hate but don't dare to leave. A scarcity mentality that you inherited and keep repeating as if it were your own. Beliefs about money, about success, about your own value, that no longer fit with who you are, but that you continue to carry because letting go of them is scary. Fear. That is the real problem. It's not the money, it's not the lack of opportunities, it's not the life that doesn't give you what you ask for. It's the fear of letting go of what you know, even if it's what's bringing you down. It's the fear of being left empty-handed. But here's the irony. If you don't empty your hands, you'll never be able to receive anything new. If you don't let go of the old, the new can't come in. Look around. What things have you been accumulating without realizing it? Not just objects, but emotions, thoughts, habits. How many of them do you still hold out of inertia, out of habit, out of fear of what will happen if you let them go? And most importantly, what have they really given you? Have they brought you closer to the life you want, or kept you stuck in a cycle that doesn't break? Money works like this too. Abundance needs space. If your mind is filled with thoughts of scarcity, there is no room for prosperity. If you cling to the idea that you don't deserve more, how do you expect it to come? If you continue to hold the fear that having money will change you for the worse, then every opportunity you have, you will reject it without realizing it. Letting go is an act of faith. It's trusting that there's something better waiting for you on the other side of the void. It is to understand that emptiness is not absence, but potential. That an empty glass is not a loss. It is an invitation to fill it with something new. When I finally understood this, I stopped holding on. I let go of what no longer fit me. I stopped holding excuses, justifying my stagnation, clinging to a past that could no longer give me anything new. And when I did, the space that was once filled with fear became a magnet for everything I had ever wanted. Mastering the law of attraction for money. Money is energy. I had heard it many times, but for a long time it seemed to me a weightless phrase, one of those ideas that people repeat without understanding. Until I saw it with my own eyes. Until I realized that the reason why money came to some and escaped from others was not effort or luck or even education. It was the frequency with which they vibrated. We live in a world where we are taught to chase money as if it were a wild animal, as if it were only available to a few, as if we had to fight for every penny, tooth and nail. They tell us that life is a competition, that you have to work until you are tired, that the rich are rich because they exploited someone, that having too much is suspicious, and so we grow, seeing money as something distant, something difficult, something that requires suffering. But we never ask ourselves if that belief is true. We never stop to see that there are people who seem to attract money easily, who see it as something natural, who move with confidence, without anxiety, without fear. What is its secret? The secret is that they don't chase him, they attract him. Money, like everything in this universe, responds to the energy with which you call it. And most people call it out of desperation, from anguish, from need. They look for it with the same attitude with which someone lost in the desert looks for water, afraid of not finding it, with the feeling that it is scarce, with the anguish that, if it comes, it will be little and will evaporate quickly. But the energy of money doesn't work like that. You can't attract something from lack. You can't call abundance out of desperation. You cannot manifest wealth when your vibration is dominated by fear. I understood it the day I stopped worrying about money and decided to act like I already had it. Not from arrogance, but from the certainty that the universe responds to security, not anxiety. I began to notice how I felt when I thought about money. Was it tension? Was it fault? Was it anguish? And I started to change it. I forced myself to feel abundant, even when my bank account said otherwise. It was not a question of denying reality, but of changing the frequency with which I related to it. And everything changed. Not immediately, but inevitably. Because when you align your energy with abundance, money finds its way to you. Not because you do less, but because you do from a different place. Because instead of moving from scarcity, you move from certainty. Because instead of acting in fear, you act in confidence. Because instead of focusing on what's missing, you're focusing on what's already on the way. Money is a slave, not a master. Make it work for you. Money dominated me for years. Or at least, I thought he did. He pursued it with the devotion of a slave who has never known freedom. I looked for him on every corner, at every opportunity, at every job that drained my soul. I believed that if I tried hard enough, if I sacrificed my hours, my energy, and my dreams, he would reward me. But money does not obey sacrifice. It does not come because of suffering. He is not loyal to those who need him, but to those who understand him. The first time I saw someone handle money like a slave and not a master, I felt a mixture of admiration and anger. He was a man who didn't seem to be running after anything, who didn't live with a frown or the pressure on the shoulders of one who fears losing everything. While the others worked their teeth to exhaustion, he let his money work for him. He was not smarter or stronger or more fortunate. I had only understood one thing I hadn't. Money is designed to serve you, not to make you kneel before it. But how do you learn to see it that way? How to break the idea that you have to fight for every penny? I grew up watching people trade their lives for a paycheck. People who worked tirelessly, who worked overtime, who accepted that money dictated every decision, every free moment, every breath. And yet, it was never enough. They worked harder, earned more, spent more, started over. The truth that no one tells us is that money was not created to be a master. It was created to move, to multiply, to serve. But instead of treating him as an ally, we turned him into a dictator. We give it power over our decisions. We let it tell us what we can and cannot do. We allow it to steal our peace, our sleep, our happiness. The day I understood that my relationship with money was upside down, something inside me broke. I couldn't go on living like this. He could no longer see money as an executioner. I couldn't keep exchanging my time for bills without understanding that there was another way. Money is energy. It doesn't care how many hours you work. He doesn't care how hard you try. He cares about how you move it, how you use it, how you direct it. And if you don't direct it, it will find someone to do it. Because money does not stay with those who need it, but with those who know how to handle it. So I started treating him differently. I stopped seeing it as a scarce resource. I stopped working just to earn it and started making it work for me. Every bill that passed through my hands had a mission. He didn't let him sleep on a bill. He didn't waste him on things without purpose. I invested it in my growth, in knowledge, in tools that would allow me to multiply it. He saw him as an army of soldiers to be sent to conquer more wealth, not as a god to whom he was to pay tribute. And everything changed. Not because the money suddenly arrived in absurd amounts, but because my relationship with it ceased to be one of submission. Because I understood that I had never been the enemy. He was just waiting for me to learn how to use it, how to handle it, how to lead it. Look around. Who's in charge? You or money? Do you make decisions for fear of losing it? Or because you know you can generate it? Do you use it as a tool, or do you let it dictate your life? If you want to be free, you first have to understand who the real master is. And it's not the money. It never was. It's your mind, your vision, your ability to see beyond what you were taught. Because money, like everything in life, obeys those who know how to dominate it. Not those who fear it, not to those who idolize him, not those who pursue it without a strategy. Your word is a command. What you say about money comes true. Words create realities, not because they are magical, but because they are instructions that we throw into the universe without realizing it. They are decrees disguised as complaints, jokes, phrases that we repeat without thinking, but every word that comes out of our mouth is a seed that we sow in the soil of our mind, and what you sow grows. I grew up surrounded by phrases like, "There is no money," "It's difficult," "Money goes fast," "The rich are thieves," "I hope one day I get luck." Phrases said naturally, with resignation, with the certainty that this was the world and there was nothing to be done. And for years, my life reflected exactly those words. There was no money. Things were difficult. The money was going fast. Luck never came. Chance? It was obedience. The universe doesn't understand jokes. He doesn't understand sarcasm. It doesn't filter what you say to see if you really meant it or not. Just listen and respond. If you say, "I don't have money," the universe takes it as an order and confirms it to you. If you say, "The money is getting out of hand," it will make sure that it does. If you repeat, "It's never enough for me," it will give you exactly that. Scarcity, insufficiency, lack. Not because he wants to punish you, but because you are decreeing it yourself. I didn't understand it until I started to observe what he was saying. I realized that every time I talked about money, I did it from the point of view, from the complaint, from frustration. And then I understood why my financial reality was an accurate reflection of my words. Words are how we give direction to our lives. They are the compass that points to where we are headed. And if we are not careful what we say, we can spend our lives giving the wrong instructions. It took me time to change my language. At first it felt strange, forced, like he's lying to me. Saying money flows to me easily when my account was in the red seemed like a joke. Saying I always have enough when I was worried about paying the bills sounded ridiculous to me. But I continued. Not because I believed that just by saying everything I would change overnight, but because I understood that if I wanted a new reality, I first had to change the story I was telling myself. And little by little, something changed. It wasn't magic, it wasn't a miracle, it was the power of management. By changing my words, I changed my focus. I stopped talking about scarcity and started talking about possibilities. I stopped saying I can't afford it and started asking how can I afford it. I stopped repeating I never have too much and began to be grateful for what I had. And what seemed impossible before began to find paths to me. Because money doesn't just respond to what you do, respond to what you say, to what you think, to what you believe. And if you're not careful with your words, you could be pushing him away without realizing it. Millionaire before he is one. The mind rules, money obeys. Money does not reach those who need it. It reaches those who are ready to receive it. And being ready is not having a bank account waiting to be filled, or a promising business, or even a clear opportunity. Being ready is a matter of mind. It is to have built within oneself the space where wealth can dwell. It's being a millionaire before money touches your hands. It took me a while to understand it. For years, I believed that money would solve my life. That if I earned more, if I got the right job, if I had the right idea, then everything would change. But every time the money came, it went just as quickly. It was like water that I was trying to hold between my fingers, and I got frustrated. I wondered why there were people who seemed to draw him in effortlessly while I had to fight for every penny. Then, one day, someone said something to me that I couldn't forget. Money is a faithful servant, but a terrible master. If you don't master him before you have him, he will dominate you. And that explained everything, because the truth was that I had never thought like someone rich. My mind kept working in survival mode, as if every bill that arrived could be the last. I lived in fear, with anxiety, with the feeling that money was something fragile, ephemeral, impossible to retain, and as long as I thought like that, my reality wasn't going to change. Because money doesn't change people. It only amplifies what they already are. If you're insecure, it will make you more insecure. If you're afraid, it will give you more reason to fear. If you feel guilty, it will ensure that you never have enough. But if you're abundant inside, if you trust yourself, if you know that wealth is just an extension of your mindset, then money becomes a reflection of what you already carry inside. That was the key that I had missed. It was not about earning more. It was about becoming someone who knew how to handle it, who felt comfortable with it, who saw it as a tool and not as an enemy. It was about thinking like a millionaire before being one. And no, it didn't mean spending like crazy, or pretending, or living beyond my means. It meant something much deeper. Trusting that money is always on the way, that there are opportunities everywhere, that wealth is a state of mind rather than an amount in the bank. I started acting differently, to speak differently, to make decisions from security, not from lack. I stopped seeing money as something I had to catch, and started seeing it as something I could generate effortlessly because I trusted my abilities, my vision, my ability to attract it. The invisible check. The money is already on the way, but you don't see it. The money is already here. What happens is that you don't see it. And since you don't see it, you think it doesn't exist. You think you have to fight for it, that chasing it is the only way to reach it. But it is a deception. Money, abundance, opportunity are already on their way to you. They have always been. But you're still looking in the wrong direction. I spent years with my eyes on the fault, counting what I didn't have, obsessing over what was missing, wondering why money was never enough. And the more I focused on what wasn't there, the further it moved away from me. It was as if life was teaching me a lesson I refused to learn. Abundance is not begging. It is expected with certainty. If someone told you that in a week you would receive a check with an absurd amount of money, how would you feel? Would you hesitate? Would you still be worried about debt? Or would you walk with the tranquility of someone who knows that everything is resolved? Because that check is already on its way. You just can't see it yet. The problem is that we live measuring life with the wrong eyes. We believe that what we cannot touch does not exist. That if the money is not in the bank account today, then there is no way it will arrive. But the reality is that money is always on the move. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's not. And the only job you really have is to trust that it's coming. I remember the first time I decided to act like the money was secured. Not because I had it in my hands, but because I understood that my desperation was pushing it away. I stopped wondering how I was going to get there. I stopped looking for him anxiously, and instead I began to walk with the certainty that it was already resolved. And when I did, the impossible began to happen. No, it wasn't magic. It was not a miracle. It was an inevitable consequence. Because money does not flow to those who doubt it. It flows to those who are waiting for it with the certainty that it is already theirs. Not from arrogance, but from confidence. Not from necessity, but from the certainty that life always finds its way. You have what you tolerate. If you accept scarcity, you will keep it. The first time I heard this truth, I was reluctant to accept it, because it meant that I was responsible. That what I had or didn't have in my life wasn't the fault of the government, the economy, my parents, my education, or my past. It was my fault, because he had allowed it, because he had tolerated it, because I had learned to live with less than I wanted, with less than I deserved, with less than I knew was possible. It's easy to blame the world for a lack of money. It is easy to say that opportunities do not come, that success is only for a few, that one does what one can, but that life is unfair. It's easy to settle for the bare minimum and call that humility. But the truth is, you have exactly what you've agreed to. No more, no less. I realized this when I looked at my own life. I had learned to tolerate discomfort, to juggle expenses, to say, that's life, whenever I was missing something. And the worst thing is that I had convinced myself that this was normal, that this was how it had to be. But money doesn't obey what you want. Obey what you allow. If you tolerate scarcity, scarcity stays. If you tolerate being paid little, you will continue to be paid little. If you tolerate money slipping out of your hands uncontrollably, it will continue to do so. Because the world doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you demand. People who have abundance are not necessarily smarter, more capable, or luckier. They simply decided not to tolerate less. They decided that scarcity was not an option, that success was not a luxury. that wealth wasn't just for others. And when he made that decision, his reality changed. But deciding not to tolerate scarcity isn't just saying it out loud, it's living it. It's to stop taking low-paying jobs. It is to stop justifying the lack of money as if it were a divine punishment. It's to stop surrounding yourself with conversations of complaint and defeat. It is learning to move with the certainty that you deserve more, even before you have it in your hands. You can't change what you tolerate overnight. But you may start to wonder, what am I accepting without realizing it? What things in my life are there just because I got used to them? Where have I lowered my standards without even noticing? Mass action, steps to get the money coming. The mind creates, emotion reinforces, but only action materializes. I spent years waiting for the perfect moment, the right opportunity, the definitive sign that told me that it was time to move. But the truth is, opportunity never comes before action. The action is what creates it. Money does not manifest itself in the life of those who desire it, but in the life of those who seek it. Not with anxiety, not with despair, but with unwavering determination. Because desire without action is just a sigh lost in the wind. How many times have you told yourself that you will do something and never did it? How many ideas have you let die because you convinced yourself that it was not the right time? How many dreams have remained sketches because the doubt was stronger than the action? The universe does not reward those who think, it rewards those who do. Rich people are not the ones who have the most ideas. They are the ones who dare to execute them. They are the ones who understand that clarity comes after movement, not before. That trust is built along the way, not before taking the first step. That money is a response to action, not a promise to those who are left waiting. It took me time to understand it. But one day I got fed up with my own stagnation. I got tired of justifying my lack of results with excuses disguised as logic. I got tired of waiting for an invisible permission to go for what I wanted. So I moved. I didn't have all the answers. I wasn't absolutely sure what would work and what wouldn't. But that stopped mattering to me. Because I understood that the fear of making a mistake had been the greatest thief of my wealth. And with each action, the money began to arrive. Not always in the way I expected, not always right away. But with each step, life responded. Because life responds to movement. If you're not taking mass action, you're not playing seriously. If you keep procrastinating on what you know you need to do, don't expect different results. If you keep doubting, you'll still be stuck in the same reality. Ask well. Receive better. Stop sending confusing signals to the universe. The universe listens to every thought, every word, every emotion. He does not interpret. He does not question. It does not distinguish between what you want and what you fear. Just obey. And he does it with brutal precision. But here's the problem. Most people ask from contradiction. They say they want money, but they act afraid to receive it. They desire abundance, but they sabotage themselves with thoughts of scarcity. They ask for opportunities, but they turn them down when they come because they don't come in exactly the way they expected. And then they wonder why they don't get what they want. The answer is simple. The universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you vibrate. For years, I desperately asked for money. He asked for it out loud, wrote it down in affirmations, repeated it every night before going to sleep. But at the same time, I worried about the bills. I was anxious about losing what little I had. I doubted that it was really possible to receive more. It was as if I was stepping on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. As if he was sending a signal of, I want more. But deep down he was saying, I don't deserve it. It's hard. I don't know how to handle it. And the universe gave me exactly that. Uncertainty. Because that was what I transmitted. It is not enough to ask. We must ask clearly. You have to ask for hidden doubts. We have to ask from certainty, not from lack. Because when you ask for something, and at the same time you are filled with fear, your energy becomes confused. It's like wanting to tune into a radio station while turning the knob back and forth. The signal is distorted. The message is lost. How many times have you asked for something and deep down felt that it was not possible? How many times have you said, I want more money, but at the same time felt uncomfortable with the idea of handling large amounts? How many times have you wished for success, but deep down you have feared that it will change you, that it will take you away from the people you know, that it will come with problems that you don't know how to handle? What you don't resolve in your mind, you block in your reality. The day I understood this, I stopped asking with my mouth and began to ask with my whole being. I stopped talking about what I wanted and started acting like I was already on my way. I stopped questioning how it was going to get there and focused on feeling ready to receive it. And the universe responded. Not immediately, not in the exact way I expected, but he answered. Because when you align your desire with your belief, when there is no longer any doubt in your request, when every part of you is in tune with what you say you want, the universe has no choice but to give it to you. Money hates no one, but it avoids the fearful. Money is like a wild animal. He does not respond to those who pursue him in despair, nor does he allow himself to be trapped by those who stalk him in fear. He approaches the one who moves with confidence, the one who does not doubt, the one who knows that he deserves to have it without apology. For years I understood it the other way around. I believed that money came only to the fortunate, to those who were born into the right family, to those who had something that I didn't have. But the truth was always in front of me, even though I didn't want to see it. Money is not a matter of luck. It's a matter of mentality. It's not about how much you work, or how many hours you sacrifice, or how many degrees you accumulate. It's about how much security you convey when you have it in your hands. Because money is not faithful to anyone, but it does have preferences. And if there's one thing he hates, it's fear. The fear of money is silent. It hides behind thoughts such as, what if I lose it? Зрение. Что если я не знаю, как управлять им? Зрение. Что если меняется меня? Зрение. Что если люди судят меня за то, что у меня есть это? We don't say it out loud, but we're sorry. We carry it like an invisible weight that makes us overspend or cling to each bill as if it were the last. And here's the paradox. Money doesn't flow where there's fear. He escapes from those who see him with anguish. He hides from those who treat him as an enemy. He distances himself from those who doubt whether they really deserve to have it. I saw it with my own eyes. I met people who worked harder than anyone else, who were intelligent, disciplined, talented, but they always lived on the verge of ruin. Not because they didn't have opportunities, but because they didn't know how to handle money without fear. Every time they had a little more, something happened. An unexpected expense, an unforeseen debt, a bad decision. It wasn't bad luck. It was the inevitable consequence of a relationship based on insecurity. Money, like life, responds to trust. And confidence is not spending without thinking or acting arrogantly. Trust is knowing that there will always be more. It is moving with the certainty that abundance is not a stroke of luck but a state of mind. It is using money intelligently, without fear of losing it, because you know that what goes away comes back multiplied. But to get there, we first have to face what we don't want to see. Are you afraid of handling large quantities? Does the idea of earning more than everyone else bother you? Do you feel guilty when you spend on something that makes you happy? Are you terrified of losing what you have? Because if fear is present in any of those answers, then there you have the reason why the money doesn't stay. The day I understood this, I stopped seeing it as a prize and began to see it for what it really is, a tool. Something that is there to be used, to multiply, to grow. Something that does not define me, but that responds to how I feel about myself. Something that has no morals, no preferences, no favoritism. Act like you're a millionaire. The universe pays the brave. Money does not reach those who want it in silence. It reaches those who dare to move as if it were already theirs. To those who decide to walk with the certainty that wealth is not a distant possibility, but an inevitable reality. But here's the tricky part. The universe doesn't respond to logic. It responds to energy. And most people live asking for abundance while acting out of fear, with doubt, with the mindset of someone who is not ready to receive. And that is a contradiction. Because you can't attract something if you continue to behave like someone who doesn't have it. For years I felt stuck in that cycle. I wanted wealth, I talked about success, but my actions still reflected scarcity. He was obsessively comparing prices. I was hesitant before investing in myself. I thought of the cheapest instead of the best for me. I thought I had to see the money before I felt safe with it. But the reality is that first you have to feel safe, and then the money comes. Because the universe rewards those who act with faith. Not with blind faith, not with irresponsibility, but with the certainty that abundance is their right. Think of someone who is already a millionaire. Not in what he has, but in how he moves. Not on how much he spends, but on how he thinks. Are they afraid to invest in themselves? Do they care about every bill that comes out of their pocket? Do they get paralyzed when they have to make a financial decision? Number. They move with confidence. Not because they have money, but because they know that there will always be more. And that is the key. It is not about spending like a millionaire without having money. It is not about buying expensive things to show off. It's about moving as someone who knows wealth is already on the way. It is about making decisions from abundance and not from lack. To stop acting as if every penny is the last. To trust that what you invest in yourself comes back multiplied. Because the truth is this: the universe does not pay those who wait, it pays those who take risks. To those who dare to think big, to move without fear, to act with the certainty that money is only a consequence of their mentality. Be grateful for the money you have, or you'll lose the money that's coming. Money is like a person. He does not go where he is not well received. It does not stay where it is not valued. It does not grow where it is only seen with contempt, fear, or indifference. For years I complained about money. I complained about how little I had. I complained about how quickly he was leaving. I complained that it was never enough. And in my arrogance, I never stopped to thank the one who was there. I saw it as an enemy, as something I had to control anxiously. I never saw him as an ally. I never welcomed him. And the result was obvious. Money treated me exactly as I treated it. He gave me little. He went quickly. It was never enough. Gratitude isn't just a nice phrase. It is a code that unlocks abundance. It's the language that money understands. Because if you can't thank a $5 bill, How do you expect to receive millions if you look down on how little you have? Why would the universe give you more? The day I understood this, something changed in me. I stopped seeing money as a problem and started seeing it as a flow, as something that comes and goes, as something that is always in motion. And I decided to change my reaction every time I used it. Instead of complaining when I paid a bill, I was thankful that I could do it. Instead of worrying when I saw my balance, I was thankful that there was something there. Instead of repeating, "It's not enough," I started saying, "This is the beginning of more." And little by little, the money responded. Not because he had learned a new financial trick, not because my job changed overnight, but because my relationship with money stopped being a war. Because where before there was complaint, now there was gratitude. And where there is gratitude, there is expansion. Look at your life now. How do you talk about money? How do you feel when you receive it? Do you appreciate it, or do you see it with fear? Do you complain when you pay for something, or are you thankful that you can do it? Because money listens. And if you don't value it today, don't expect it to come more tomorrow. It's not magic, it's method. Daily ritual to attract money. Money does not come by chance, nor does it respond to desires thrown into the air without direction. It's not magic, it's method. And if you don't have a method, you're leaving your abundance to chance. For years, I believed that wealth depended on luck, innate talent, or being in the right place at the right time. I saw successful people and I thought that they had something that I didn't. But over time, I understood that these were not hidden gifts or mysterious opportunities. It was about habits. It was a system. It was about what they did every day. Because money follows the direction you give it. And if you don't give him any, he scatters. He escapes, disappears. What separates those who have wealth from those who do not is not intelligence or education. It is repetition. It is what they think, what they feel, and what they do every day without fail. And that was the greatest discovery of my life, that abundance is not a stroke of luck, but the result of constant small actions that, together, create a powerful magnet. So I decided to give it a try. I committed myself to a daily ritual, not from superstition, but from the certainty that if I repeated certain actions with discipline, something had to change. And it changed. Every morning, before running off to chase money, I would stop to thank the money I already had. It didn't matter if it was 5 or 50,000, he treated it with the same respect. He told it, recognized it, gave it a purpose. Because money does not stay where it is not valued. Afterwards, he would talk to me like someone who was already rich, not as someone who hopes to be one, but as someone who already is. I observed how he referred to money and eliminated phrases such as, "It is difficult," "It is not enough," "You have to suffer to earn it." Instead, I started saying money flows to me. I always have what I need. Abundance is my natural state. And although at first it seemed like an absurd game, over time I realized that it was not a game. It was a mental training. It was the same principle athletes use to program their body. If you train your mind for scarcity, you'll see scarcity. If you train her for abundance, money will start flowing in that direction. Then, he acted. Because there's no point in thinking big if you keep acting small. He asked me a question every day. What can I do today to multiply my wealth? And it wasn't always a great strategy. Sometimes it was learning something new. Sometimes it was making a decision that I had been putting off. Sometimes it was just to stop wasting time on things that didn't add up to me. But every action, no matter how small, added up, and the sum of those small actions repeated every day, built a new destiny. People believe that attracting money is a matter of luck, nice statements, or visualizing bills in the account. It's not. It is method. It's a ritual. It's what you do every day without fail. It's the energy with which you relate to money, the way you think, the way you move in the world. Infinite expansion, making wealth multiply. Money is not something that is kept. It is not something that is held back in fear, that is hidden in a corner as if it were a fragile treasure that can disappear at any moment. Money is movement. It is expansion. And like everything in life, what does not grow dies. For years, I saw money as something I had to protect. As if the only way to make sure I didn't lack was to hold it tightly, spend it as little as possible, keep it locked up. But what I discovered was the opposite. Money that does not move stagnates, like water in a puddle with no way out, like a seed that is never sown. Real wealth is not accumulating money. It is knowing how to multiply it. It's knowing how to put it to work. It's understanding that the money you generate today is not the end of the game, but the beginning of something bigger. The first time I won an amount that seemed significant to me, my instinct was to protect it, save it, store it somewhere safe. But over time, I realized that didn't make me rich. I became a prisoner of fear. Because stopped money loses value, vanishes, depreciates, and above all, it keeps you in the mindset of those who believe that if they lose it, they won't be able to get it back. People who really multiply their wealth think differently. They don't see money as a finite resource, but as an infinite tool. They do not ask how to retain it, but how to make it grow. But to multiply it, we must first stop seeing it as something sacred. You have to let go of the fear of losing it. You have to learn to use it without anxiety, without guilt, without the feeling that it is a lottery that could end at any moment. Money multiplies when it's used wisely. When you invest it in knowledge, in assets, in experiences that generate more value. When instead of spending it without direction, you direct it with intention. When instead of hiding it, you set it in motion. Fear is the greatest killer of wealth. The fear that it will not be enough. The fear that if you invest it, you'll lose it. The fear that if you bet on something new, you will fail. But the truth is this: money does not stay with those who fear it. It stays with those who understand it, with those who know that their true function is not to be kept, but to be expanded. And expansion isn't just a matter of numbers, it's a matter of mentality. It is a matter of trusting that abundance does not run out, that there is always more, that the money you use wisely always comes back multiplied. Gratitude is the magnet of money. The more you're grateful, the more you receive. Money gets to where it's welcome. It stays where it is appreciated. It multiplies where it is treated with respect, with love, with the certainty that there will always be more. But where there is complaint, fear, or indifference, he moves away. I spent years without understanding it. I lived waiting for more money, but I only focused on what I lacked. I complained about expenses. I got frustrated with debt. I looked at my bank account with resentment. And what he didn't see was that every thought, every word, was an order he sent to the universe. Because money listens, life listens, and if your self-talk revolves around scarcity, scarcity is what you keep attracting. The day I understood this, I decided to change my relationship with money. Not from desperation, but from gratitude. I began to be grateful for every bill, every coin, every payment I made. It didn't matter if it was a little or a lot, he saw it as a flow. as a sign that the money was on the move and that it would always come back. Every time he paid a bill, instead of thinking, "I'm losing my money," he said, "I'm glad I can pay it." Every time he received an amount, instead of saying, "It's just this," he said, "This is the beginning of more." And something changed. Because gratitude is not just a beautiful emotion, it is a magnetic force. It's the clearest signal you can send to the universe that you are ready to receive more. People who are truly rich, not only in money but in mentality, have one thing in common. They are grateful. They don't take what they have for granted. They don't focus on what they lack. They see the abundance in everything even before it comes. Because abundance is not a number, it is a way of seeing the world. It is knowing that money does not reach those who pursue it desperately, but those who treat it with confidence. It is understanding that what you are grateful for expands. Watch how you talk about money. Do you complain more than you appreciate? Do you focus more on what you don't have than on what you do? Do you curse payments, or are you thankful that you can make them? Because every thought, every word, every emotion is a sign. And if you're not thanking, you're blocking. It is not a matter of settling for little. It's about understanding that gratitude is the key that opens the door to more. That money is not attracted by anguish, but by security. That life always gives more to those who have already learned to value what they have. Turn on the tap of abundance. There's enough money to go around. Money is like water. It flows effortlessly, in all directions, looking for where to be received. He does not discriminate. He does not judge. He does not hide. But if you live with the idea that it's scarce, it's as if you're holding the faucet with all your might, stopping the water from running, not because there isn't any, but because you don't let her in. For years, I believed that abundance was limited, that if someone had a lot, someone else had to have less, that wealth was a zero-sum game where some won and others lost. I had heard it so many times that I assumed it to be an absolute truth. Money is concentrated in a few hands. If someone is rich, it is because they exploited others. The world is unfair. Words that I repeated without realizing that each one was a padlock closing the way to abundance in my life. But the truth is different. The money does not run out. It is not a cake that, when distributed, leaves some with nothing. It is an energy that is created, that moves, that multiplies to the extent that you allow it to flow. And the only reason you don't have more is because you still believe there's little. Because you keep turning off the tap with thoughts of scarcity, with fear, with guilt, with the mistaken idea that asking for more is taking something away from someone. One day someone said to me, "If money were really scarce, how come millions are printed in the world every day? How is it that fortunes are doubled, reinvented, expanded? Money doesn't run out, it just changes hands. And the secret is to make sure it gets to yours." That phrase stuck in my mind like an echo. If money doesn't run out, why did I live as if I were an endangered asset? Why did he keep acting as if it was something to be taken care of with fear rather than something he could generate without limits? I realized that scarcity was a state of mind, that people who had money didn't see it as something difficult or dangerous or unfair. I saw it as something natural, as something that is always there for those who dare to take it. But here's the key. You can't receive what you don't think is possible for you. You can't open your hand if you still think there's little to it. You can't fill your life with abundance if you continue to cling to the idea that money is for others, but not for you. Look at your relationship with abundance. Are you afraid of wanting more? Does it bother you to see someone with wealth? Do you feel that asking for too much is selfish? Because if any of those answers are yes, then that's the reason why money isn't flowing to you. Not because there isn't enough, but because you keep turning off the tap yourself. When I understood this, I decided to open it. Not with arrogance, not with greed, but with the certainty that abundance is not a privilege of a few, but a right of all who dare to receive it. I stopped seeing wealth as something that others had, and I didn't. And I started seeing it as something that could also be mine. Stop running after money and make it run after you. The first time I heard this idea, I laughed. It sounded ridiculous. How could I make money haunt me if my whole life had been the other way around? If every penny I earned went as fast as it came? If every day I woke up with the feeling that I had to work twice as hard to achieve the same thing? We live in a world where we were taught that money is elusive, that you have to hunt it, chase it, fight for it. We were told that the only way to have it was to work to exhaustion, sacrifice our peace, sell our soul if necessary. And we believed it. We became slaves to the search, running relentlessly after something that always seems to be one step ahead. But here's the truth that no one told us. Money never goes to the one who desperately pursues it. He is attracted to those who do not need it, to those who move with certainty, to those who know that wealth is not begged but generated. Money is like a shadow. If you run after him, run away. If you walk with confidence, it follows you. For years, I was a slave to money without realizing it. I worried about every expense. I got anxious every time I saw my bank account. I felt like it was never enough. And the more I thought about how little I had, the harder it seemed to get there. Until I understood that money is nothing more than a response to who I am, to what I believe, to the way I move in the world. It does not reach those who beg for it, but those who dominate it. He does not stay with those who see him as a god, but with those who treat him as a servant. And how do you make money chase you instead of you chasing it? It begins by ceasing to vibrate in lack. You start by acting as if the money is already secured, not from arrogance, but from the certainty that abundance is your natural state. Think of someone who has money, not in what he owns, but in how he behaves. He is not desperate. He is not worried every minute of the day. He does not live in fear that it will run out. He moves with a confidence that attracts more money to him, because money loves security, determination, clarity. The problem is that most people move with the opposite energy. They ask for money while vibrating in fear. They work more, but from anguish. They think of wealth, but they feel it is distant, unattainable, impossible. And that is the mistake. You can't attract what you feel is out of reach. The day I understood this, everything changed. I stopped running after the money and started walking around like it was already mine. It does not mean spending uncontrollably or doing crazy things. It means making decisions from abundance and not from fear. It means moving with the assurance that money is always on the way, that there's more than you need, that you don't have to chase it because it already belongs to you. Money loves those who dare. Get out of your comfort zone. Money has never been in comfort. He has never been in the safe routine, in the predictable paths, in the decisions that do not make him uncomfortable. Money, true wealth, is beyond fear, beyond what is known, beyond what you think possible today. But to get there, you first have to get out of where you are. For years, I lived with the illusion that if I worked hard enough, if I did things right, if I followed the path that everyone said was the right one, the money would come. They told me that if I studied, if I got a good job, if I saved with discipline, one day I would have stability. and I believed it. Until I saw reality. People with more money are not the ones who work the most. They are not the ones who sacrifice the most. They are the ones who dare the most. They are the ones who walk out of line, the ones who defy the rules, the ones who take calculated risks when others are paralyzed. They are the ones who understand that comfort is the worst enemy of wealth. But stepping out of your comfort zone is scary, because everything you know is in there. Your habits, your beliefs, your way of making a living. There's the secure salary, the predictable routine, the false sense of stability. But there is also stagnation. There is also resignation. There's also the life you don't want, but that you keep holding because at least it's something. Money loves movement. He loves boldness. He loves those who do not wait, those who do not ask permission, those who do not conform, and it rejects it to those who live in fear, to those who hide behind excuses, to those who are not willing to bother to grow. Look around. How long have you been in the same place? How long have you been waiting for the perfect moment, the right opportunity, the divine sign? How long have you been telling yourself that someday you will make that change, that soon you will take that risk, that when the time is right, you will do what you know you should do? The timing is never perfect. Opportunity never comes with a guarantee. Security is an illusion. But if you keep waiting, the only sure thing is that you will still be in the same place. Money is not a reward for patience. It is a reward for those who dare. For those who bet on themselves when no one else does. For those who launch when they don't yet have all the answers. Your new financial code, guilt-free wealth. Money is not a sin. It is not a burden. It is not a poison that makes you greedy, or a weapon that destroys the essence of who you are. But if you grew up surrounded by the idea that wealth is dangerous, that having too much is suspicious, that money corrupts, then every bill that passes through your hands will feel like a peso. And a weight is never something you want to carry around for long. For years, I sabotaged myself without realizing it. He asked for abundance, but deep down, he was afraid that he would change who he was. I wanted more money, but I was uncomfortable with the idea of receiving it effortlessly. I admired those who had wealth, but in my mind I repeated the same phrases I had heard all my life. The rich have no values. Money is dirty. True success is spiritual. Words that seemed harmless but were designed to keep me small. Guilt-free wealth begins when you give yourself permission to have money without guilt, without justifying it, without apologizing for wanting more, without fear of what others may think. Because financial guilt is a trap. If you feel uncomfortable with abundance, you will unconsciously take it upon yourself to push it away. If you feel like having more is too much, you'll be sure to lose it. If you think you have to suffer to win, you will never accept money that comes easily. But what would happen if you rewrote that code? If, instead of associating wealth with guilt, you saw it as a natural expansion of who you are? If you understood that having more doesn't make you less human, but gives you more options, more freedom, more opportunities to give. Money doesn't change anyone. It only amplifies what is already inside you. If you're generous, it will give you more resources to share. If you're selfish, it's just going to be a bigger mirror than you already were. But the problem is not money. The problem is who you think you are when you have it. Look at your thoughts on wealth. Do you feel comfortable imagining a prosperous life? Or does something inside you resist? Do you allow yourself to desire more without guilt? Or do you hold yourself back because you think it's not spiritual? Does it bother you to see someone successful, or does it inspire you? If there is discomfort somewhere in you, there is the blockage. Therein lies the reason why money does not flow as it should. Not because you can't generate it, but because your financial code is still tied to guilt. The new code is clear. Money is a tool, not an enemy. It is a force that responds to your relationship with him. And when you allow yourself to receive without remorse, without fear, without the need to justify every penny, the money begins to stay. Because there are no longer internal barriers that reject it. If you've made it this far, you know the truth. Money isn't the enemy, but it's not the savior either. It's not going to give you happiness, but it's not going to take it away from you either. It doesn't have the power to ruin you, but it can amplify what you already are. And therein lies the key. Wealth does not begin in the bank account. It starts in the mind. It starts with how you talk to yourself, how you feel when you think about money, how energy you make decisions with. If you continue to treat abundance as something unattainable, as something that only comes with sacrifice or luck, you will continue to be stuck in the same cycle of scarcity. But if you change the code, if you dare to let go of the victim mentality, if you start moving with the certainty that wealth is your right and not a privilege of a few, everything changes. This book was not to teach you how to make money. It was to teach you to stop rejecting it. Now the question is, what are you going to do with all this? Are you going to keep waiting, doubting, procrastinating? Or are you going to move with the certainty that money is just a tool, a resource, a consequence of the person you become? Because in the end, abundance is not pursued. It is attracted. And attracting it is up to you. Your relationship with money changed in these pages. But the real change starts now, in real life. And the only person who can make it work, it's you. If this audiobook has inspired you, imagine what you can discover with many more. Do not let knowledge and spiritual growth stop here. Explore our full playlist and dive into more transformative wisdom to continue expanding your mind. Don't miss the opportunity to continue transforming your reality. Take the next step now. Thank you very much.